Namaste, beautiful souls. Welcome and thank you for watching. I'm Gabrielle, retired medium in Germany, and I like to share some of my otherworldly experiences and insights. So this is about know thyself. What is your inner experience? The thumbnail picture showed a well-known image, the two faces and the vase. And because these two are oscillating, you usually see one or the other. You can only kind of focus onto seeing the faces or the vase. So what you perceive as the kind of first picture is in psychology called the ground picture. You cannot see both at the same time. That tells you something about focus and how open someone is. Multiple imagery, meaning seeing both at the same time, is very, very rare. I had a friend with whom I once did, just for fun, this little exercise, looking at the two faces and vase. And she said, "I can see both." I did not really believe her because she was half my age and was still kind of seeking her place in the world. So she was about making herself interesting and wanting to be different and stuff like that. So, sorry, I like her. She's still my friend, but I didn't believe her saying she could see both at the same time, because I know it is very, very rare. Only very few people can count money and talk at the same moment and not lose the counting. I know of a diagnosed schizophrenic who could. That person could even watch 3 TV programs at the same time and get all at once. So that is really very rare. I can give you another example. When I started taking drumming lessons, the drumming teacher, of course, introduced us first to rhythms. And he broke them down into smaller pieces so that we could first learn and exercise one part, then the second or third part, and then put them together and play the whole rhythm. And after a while, he wanted to introduce singing to the drumming. And I noticed I cannot drum and sing at the same time. You know, when I was still into drumming, I could not do another thing like memorizing the words of the song and sing and come in at the right moment and stuff like that. So I had to train that. So drumming and singing at the same time was difficult for me. If you are a skilled drummer and you can kind of automatically drum a rhythm without thinking about it or focusing and concentrating on the movements of your fingers and your hand or whatever, then you have kind of the basis to put something else upon, like singing. And as usually people sing songs that are made up from sentences and words that leads into verbal attention, and then you're about memorizing the words and the sentences and maybe even in the background thinking about their meaning and stuff like that. So it gets a convoluted process. I have another 2 interesting examples about what we think we know and what we really know, reaching down into our subconscious. I studied with the Rosicrucians right after coming back from India, where I had my near-death experience for over 20 years. And when my first husband committed suicide, shortly after, I had a dream wherein he appeared. It was kind of a Second World War scenario. On the battlefield, he was lying on the ground as if dead, but he had the eyes open, and he was had movement in the eyes, so it was not the stare of a dead body. So he was alive, and there were people around. The only person I could recognize in that dream was his brother, and I've never dreamt of his brother before. So there was murmuring going on and shouting and speaking like, "Oh, he's alive, he survived it," because he committed suicide on this side. And studying with the Rosicrucians about afterlife, invisible realms, higher knowledge, and all that kind of esoteric knowledge that I thought I knew for over 70 years and believed. Guess what I uttered in that dream? I looked at him and I said, "That's impossible, you are dead." So that was coming instinctively, directly, intuitively from my subconscious. And that was still programmed with the normal, kind of normal stuff we're under and influenced with since birth. There is only this life, and when you die, you're gone, and boom, there's nothing else. Dang, there you have it. Which is wrong, because you would not listen to my or other people's videos about spiritual themes and esoteric topics and stuff like that if it wouldn't exist, because then you could not be interested in it. Another dream I had was the Lucid Dream. Even made a video about that on my YouTube channel describing just the experience. I was hovering under the ceiling and looked down on this little puppet body lying in bed and sleeping. And suddenly I heard this booming voice coming from seemingly above, asking me, "Do you want to wake up or do you want to carry on sleeping?" And of course, instinctively, I knew in the same moment it was not about me sleeping in the bed, it was about spiritual awakening. And guess what? Seeking for the meaning and purpose of my life, my mission, and all this esoteric knowledge, I did not burst out saying, "Yes, I want." I was hesitant. I was going like, and and then I woke up and kind of missed the possibility or the chance. And I was upset with myself because I didn't answer. But later I understood I needed the processing, to become aware that I do not know how awakened feels like or is like, not at least in this life with the memory I have as this person, Gabrielle, with her story and what she thinks she is or is not. So that was the programmed subconscious fear we more or less all have of the unknown. That's why I was hesitant and not saying yes right away. And I needed a process after that dream that stirred up all this questioning and the feelings and emotions that came up to understand, oh, I was afraid to face the unknown. That's why I could not say yes at the moment of the dream. But after I processed that and thought it through, well, becoming aware of my subconscious fear of the unknown then of course my attitude and point of view and my feelings towards that changed. So, but back to the topic. It's about sensory awareness, which is kind of divided into the 5FP, frequent phenomenon, by the psychologist Dr. Russel Hurlburt, quite accurately, because he states we have firstly inner speaking, an inner monologue in a silent voice. Secondly, inner seeing, that is visual imagery. Thirdly, inner feelings, having emotions without experiencing them right at that moment. Fourthly, sensory awareness. Example, opening a door. Do you notice the material of the door? Do you notice whether it opens to the inside or to the outside, to the left or the right? Do you notice maybe the knob and the color of the knob? Fifthly, unsymbolized thinking. That is thinking with no inner imagery, feeling, or speaking. A good example for that are unspecified questions like, are you happy? You cannot answer that because it's unspecified. Because you might be happy with some circumstances in your life, but very unhappy with another. So you cannot answer that. And it's dependent on the question because the question is unspecified. It's not focused or targeted onto something like a special target. So everything really starts with uniqueness. There is no inner experience all humans share. There might be similarities, and by that you can kind of benefit from the experience another one shares, if you recognize patterns. But you cannot force one into categories. And categories like being normal, being crazy, being this and being that. I was, for a long time in my life, afraid of being crazy or becoming crazy because at home I was a psychic, more or less. But I did not know about that. It was all about the mundane things. So if I said something that came from my inner experience, my mother was very kind of rejective of that, and she never accepted that and always had this kind of saying, oh, you're crazy, that's not there, that's not true, and stuff like that. So my psychic senses were constantly denied. So to become more aware of your inner experience, you need training. Dr. Hurlburt explored the whole topic quite deeply and developed a training method which I really love and like. That's such a great idea. That's like evidential mediumship, the English tradition I was taught in. Getting proof for what you perceived or what you feel. So the training of Dr. Hurlburt was with a beeper. The people in his study group had to wear a beeper that randomly beeped during the day. And then the member of the study group had to take a few moments out and just focus and write or note down what was he or she thinking right before the beep, in the exact wording, not unspecific like thinking about happiness. No, the exact wording was needed. And what was he or she seeing, feeling, or sensory aware of? To become more aware of your inner experience, the process of knowing thyself, sampling might be necessary, and it needs another one, an opposite, a skilled one. And apps on your cell phone won't work, because until you open them, the time goes by, you're already kind of a few seconds away from your first thought that you had right when it beeped. So it doesn't really work. A beeper is really the best method. And everybody has an inner monologue sometimes, but only few have a constant inner monologue, talking to themselves in their head with a silent voice. I thought everybody has an inner monologue constantly because I have. And the weird thing to me is that silent voice is talking English, not German, although I'm born German and that's my mother tongue. I was projecting that onto others because here you have proof again of that you do not perceive the world as it is, but as you are, because we are constantly projecting onto the outside, onto others. I found out that not everybody has a constant inner monologue. They don't hear the silent voice talking in their head, and they can't remember the exact wording or the thought that was going on. So an armchair introspection, sometimes during your day, asking yourself, what am I thinking right now, is a good idea, but it's tricky because it takes you into the verbal mode. And your inner experience is not always verbal. You are not always thinking in words. You can be seeing pictures, imagery, you can be feeling feelings that are not connected to your right now moment. And you can be sensory aware, or you can have unsymbolized thinking. So there are a few weird things to me. Like once somebody commented, I could not follow your guided meditation because I have aphantasia and I could not imagine your recommended inner imagery. And I thought, wow, never heard of that before. And I even went and looked it up. And, it said aphantasia is having no inner imagery. But some of these people can dream in images. So only the willingly imagery is affected by that. Does that give you something to ponder upon? It's said that they are born alike or have a brain trauma or something like that. I have a very different idea about all of that because I just think that science, doctors, medicine invent some new diseases and diagnoses because they don't know what they are dealing with. In former days, a psychic was diagnosed as schizophrenic or crazy or whatever, because psychology does not acknowledge a higher force like source or divine energy. It's just about the human psyche. So, there is this also diagnosed a kind of pattern recognition called pareidolia. We had to have and develop that because our forefathers, kind of caveman, had to recognize patterns because of survival mode and fear of becoming victim of a predator animal. If there was a saber-toothed tiger sitting in a bush, observing and watching that caveman, he needed to be sensory aware that he is watched, and then look around and recognize the pattern, the two eyes maybe shining through the leaves of the bush, and then take his legs and run. And even in nature, some animals imitate that. There are butterflies, at least here in Germany, that have kind of two big round eyes on their wings. So by that, they scare away potential predators. Isn't that interesting? So I do not really believe in aphantasia. I believe it might also be a developed thing because nowadays you get everything spoon-fed into your mouth. You see all the pictures, the movies kind of fill you up with pictures, and when do you really use your own inner imagery? I was even asked in the comments sometimes, can't you insert a picture of what you're talking about? Or someone wanted to see pictures of orbs that I talked about in my video about orbs. And I refused, because then again, you do not use your own potential of imagining. And whatever skill you do not use, it withers away with the time. So, coming back to the topic, you need a skilled opposite that must ask details of your imagery. Just saying, I dream of my dream house isn't enough. And the example I gave, just imagine you're going into your bathroom. Do you also perceive or are sensory aware of how the door is opening to your bathroom, to the inside or to the outside, to the left or the right? Are you aware of the doorknob and its color and stuff like that? So that's what I wanted to share with you today, just to make you ponder and dig deeper, because we are kind of programmed since birth with a lot of stuff that is not true, not even beneficial to us, and that hinders us to kind of really enter into the process, know thyself, because every spiritual path starts with know thyself. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for watching. Blessings, joy and happiness to you, beautiful souls on your soul path. Bye.